Hi, this is Ryan. It's Clovis Star News. It's March 14th, 2016, and violence going on now at the Trump rallies brought in by Bernie Sanders supporters. I don't think Trump has handled this 100% well. I think he could have done things differently, although I don't oppose, fighting fire with fire. If Bernie Sanders camp is going to come in and raise a ruckus and bring violence, and I support what Trump said. If they're going to bring violence, bring it back to them. Hand it to them in kind. Why not? Are Trump rallies supposed to be punching bags? The people that go to these rallies aren't there to get punched and to get harassed by Bernie Sanders supporters. So yeah, I would have handled it similar, maybe not exactly the same way as Trump did, but I would have told people, hey, if they're going to bring violence to you, I would not hesitate to bring violence back to them. Fight fire with fire. Unfortunately, that's what it came down to. But this is the same thing. Now, I've talked a lot about the socialism aspect and how Bernie Sanders is a lot like Hitler. A lot of people will say, but he's a Jew. Why would he be a Nazi, or why would he be like Hitler? He's a Jew. Hitler was a Jew. I think his father's last name before he was adopted was Schluckmaker or something. It was a Jewish last name, and so Hitler's blood father was a Jew, making Hitler a Jew. And it doesn't really matter, the race or the creed or the religion. It's the actions that I'm talking about here. And you look what happened in the German federal election in March 1933, the same thing happened. The SS and the brown shirts and all them were out in full force, harassing and creating violence against the Communist Party, the left-wingers, trade unionists, Social Democrat Party, and the center-right Catholic Centre Party. Anybody who was their opposition, basically. And they fought kind of some of the people on their same wavelength. The Social Democrats were very similar to the National Socialist Party, but the National Socialist Party wanted full domain, in that country. So they brought violence to people and violence against their opponents in these political elections. And it was very similar to what's going on right now with Bernie Sanders supporters. It's a terrible notion that we have to bring violence to these campaigns, and it shouldn't happen this way. But it is what it is, and history repeats itself. A lot of the things that I talk about with Bernie Sanders relating to Hitler, well, they say he's he's a democratic socialist. Hitler was elected too, via democratic processes. The National Socialist Party participated in the elections, and the people of Germany voted them in. It wasn't a violent takeover, or a coup or whatever. I guess it was violent, but it wasn't a coup per se. It was, a general election that the National Socialists won. Same thing with, all of Bernie Sanders. And they did the same thing. The National Socialists did the same thing Bernie Sanders is doing. They hit on the poverty issues and the trade union things and the labor side of things. And they're the National Socialists, German Workers' Party is what they were called. Very similar to the trade unionists that support Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, he says, this is just donations by people, not by corporations. And that's not true necessarily. I mean, the people supporting him, they found most of the money is coming from unions. And unions are known to have violence and ties with the mob and, lots of nefarious dealings. And that's the same kind of people that were supporting Hitler. Trade unionists, labor unions, labor anyway. And that's what they were all about. The National Socialist German Workers' Party, that's what they were all about. And so they would hit on things like, immigration. Bernie Sanders is immigration, anti-open borders anyway. He does not want open borders. I put a video on my channel, and I'll link it here, and you can see how Trump and Bernie Sanders almost agree on these things almost entirely. And the Germans, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, would talk about prevailing wages and working conditions and regulations on employment and sharing the wealth of the ownership of the business, the means of production, sharing that with the workers. Same basic things that Bernie Sanders is talking about. So they promise free stuff. They go in there and they say, hey, we're going to be your mommy and we're going to be your daddy and we're going to make sure you're taken care of. And this is what we're going to give you. Vote for us. You're going to get free college, free health care, free ponies, whatever. And then they get all these votes and then they go for the guns. That's the next step after, if Bernie Sanders was to get in. And he probably will, but I don't know. I mean, it's usually geared towards a bloodline. All of the presidents except for one, all 43 of 44 presidents share a bloodline to an English king, John Lackland. All of them except for Martin Van Buren. So if it plays out the way I think it's going to play out, it's going to be Hillary Clinton because she's part of the bloodline. I don't know how they do it, whether they fix the elections, whether these dialog machines are really, hackable, or how they're going to do it. I kind of think that Hillary's going to be the president, unfortunately, because she's part of the bloodline. It's proven, Bill Clinton was part of it. Hillary is related as well to this King John Lackland, and is likely going to be her. But let's say Bernie Sanders gets in, and possibly Hillary as well. The next step is to take the guns, to remove our ability to defend ourselves, to create more and more of these restrictions on defending ourselves as people, as a nation, against a tyrannical government. And then, the economic conditions are going to get worse and worse and worse, and then tyranny is going to raise. They're going to start putting curfews and possibly martial law. I mean, this is just, going through history and seeing history repeat itself over and over and over. And no country in the world is carrying the kind of debt that the United States is carrying now. When Bernie Sanders completely breaks his country by offering free stuff to everybody and, $70 billion a year for free education and, $15 trillion for all of the other stuff, combined, when the country is flat broke and there is just nothing left, then there's going to be martial law. Then there's going to be, alliances with foreign nations, and there's going to be eminent domain issues and restrictions on rights and restrictions on self-defense and restrictions on this and that. And that's where this is going, in my opinion. It's unfortunate, but I think if any of them, if it's going to be Trump, if it's going to be Clinton, if it's going to be Sanders, I think we're looking at fairly much the same thing. The only thing that I like about Trump is that he looks like he could actually do something to fix the economy and pay off our debts. He's done it before. He's went through bankruptcy. He's paid off those debts. He's got back on his feet, and he's back on his feet strong. And I think that that's the only thing that is a benefit on what he's doing. There's a few things I like about him, but as far as his plan, I think he's the only one that would be able to free us from this debt and this slavery that we're in with the Federal Reserve and the IRS and all that, and the massive amounts of money that we owe to foreign nations. I think he could reduce that so that we are more sovereign and more independent and less, needy for other countries to help us. That would be good. But he's insincere. He never says, I don't think he ever says what he actually feels. I think he says what people want to hear, and I don't trust him. I don't trust any of them. That's why I'm voting for Vermin Supreme. But I just wanted to report on this. This violence is definitely startling. But there's a first for everything, and I don't know. I've never seen anything like it. Take care.